Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Our friends at CNBC, or as some like to call them, CNBS, did a video comparing Chinese EVs to Tesla. As you would expect from CNBS, it's not really a well done video. They're not really doing the right thing, but they capture a lot of bits here and there, and I'm going to try to bring it together for you.
自动泊车. Please park the car.
Lately, we've been hearing a lot of this.
You've got companies like NIO, companies like Lishan, these Chinese NEV makers that are frankly as good, if not better than Tesla right now.
I know people will say Americans won't buy Chinese. You know what? You ask somebody, do you want to pay $9,000 for an SUV, or do you want to pay $19,000 or $20,000 for an SUV? No contest.
Causing some concern to the likes of Elon Musk and Tesla and a number of other car makers.
And so the age of the much-feared Chinese auto export has begun.
For Americans, it's hard to process that because we don't see Chinese cars on American roads. Trust me, go to Australia, to Mexico, to Brazil, to Israel, to South Africa. You're going to see Chinese cars all over the place.
So I'm sitting here in Thailand, and I'm seeing BYD in particular and some other Chinese EVs, and they're starting to see more and more of them. It is true that there are some places where you're seeing more Chinese EVs. They are very competitive. I haven't seen a $9,000 Chinese SUV yet. I think I've seen maybe $17,000. And frankly, I don't see a lot of $20,000 SUVs in America either. So I don't know where he's getting his numbers from. Is it a threat to Tesla? Not really. And we'll get into that. And actually, they kind of reveal that it's not really a threat to Tesla, not even in China, although they kind of mishmash their stuff together. But let's listen some more.
American trade groups and others worry China will do with cars what it has done with countless other industries: eradicate competition with cheap labor and materials and abundant government support. Chinese firms are already pushing out competitors at home. The Biden administration slapped a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs.
Now, I want to start by a criticism, which I would probably apply equally to Donald Trump, is that putting tariffs on Chinese EVs doesn't really make sense. If you have been telling us since the Obama administration, and Biden was part of the Obama administration, that climate change is the greatest threat to humanity, it's an existential threat and so on and so forth, then Chinese EVs would be good for reducing that threat. And also, if you care about American consumers, from what I've seen of Chinese EVs, and I've seen a fair bit, you are depriving American consumers of the opportunity to get more efficient cars that cost less money. The allegation or the statement that the Chinese government is subsidizing Chinese EV makers, well, the American government is subsidizing and giving massive tax credits to American car makers. So it is a level playing field. China does have tariffs on cars coming in, but American cars wouldn't really be competitive in China anyway. I'm in Thailand, and the Ford Ranger is competitive. It's the number 5 selling vehicle in Thailand, although there's two Japanese pickup truck manufacturers that are ahead. There's no American-made cars that are going to compete in China because the cost of production in China is so low. So, the fact that China has tariffs, okay. But this idea that Biden slapping tariffs is going to somehow stop the onslaught, well, it will. It will protect bad American car manufacturers from having to face genuine competition and having to actually compete. And maybe it protects the United Auto Workers, which what's going on is the owners of General Motors and Ford, the executives of General Motors and Ford and Stellantis, and the unions, the United Auto Workers and other unions, are getting more money at the cost of the American consumer paying $5,000 or $10,000 more per vehicle than they would have to pay, not to mention the amount of money that American consumers would save by driving energy-efficient vehicles that cost a lot less to power with electricity than American cars cost to power with gas.
Tesla got caught flat-footed in the China market because no one anticipated such a severe turn.
Tesla has not been caught flat-footed in the Chinese market. Tesla is doing fine in the Chinese market. The Chinese market has been up and down, and you will actually hear later in the video how Chinese consumers prefer Tesla and think Tesla is better. So the idea that Tesla has somehow been caught flat-footed, no, Tesla makes the best electric vehicles in the world. I'm going to say this clearly. Tesla makes the best, most cost-effective, most efficient, best software, safest electric vehicles in the world. And Chinese consumers know that, as they're going to tell you later in this video. and the Chinese EVs are starting to get better, but they're not there yet. So the idea that Tesla has somehow been caught flat-footed is just demonstrating you misunderstand both what Chinese EVs are and misunderstanding Chinese consumers and the Chinese market.
We're seeing the effects of that. All the legacy automakers are scrambling.
They're not just shopping them because they're cheap. They've superscaled the set of features that consumers are demanding.
So how formidable are Chinese EVs? How do they stack up against the world's most popular model, the Tesla Model Y? CNBC tried a few to find out.
So CNBC tried a few. The video's about a lot more than that, and you're going to hear some details. But this allegation, they keep saying these things like, oh, there's all these problems for Tesla. Tesla's fine. Just want to be clear. What I see is that for Tesla to compete long-term, there was this vision in the past, which I don't know if Tesla's recanted yet, that Tesla would sell 20 million vehicles in 2030. And I'm not sure whether they said sold or produced, but that they would sell 20 million vehicles in 2030. And I think the problem is that Tesla's able to sell premium vehicles at a premium price. But if Tesla wants to compete at the low price points that BYD and others are making vehicles, you're talking about $17,000 for a decent SUV, maybe even $15,000, and some vehicles are even less expensive. I just did a video about this, so check out this video if you want to see my video where I went through an auto show in Bangkok and you can see what's on the market. So the Chinese EV makers have certain deficiencies that Chinese consumers actually care about. And this idea that they're offering features, they're offering a whole wide variety of features, and some of them are working and some of them aren't, and some of them are things customers want and some of them things customers don't really care about. So that market has still got to shake out a little bit.
So this is the Tesla Model Y. This is currently the best-selling car in the world.
Woo! The acceleration on these things is incredible.
Tesla is a really highly respected brand in China, but homegrown Chinese automakers are really catching up. And in some cases, surpassing. In fact, there are around 140 EV brands in the country.
I wanted to hit this point that there's 139 brands in China. We've seen this before when you have a market start to explode and the EV market is exploding. You end up with a lot of competitors, and then over time, it washes out and you end up with, 5 or 10. So of these 139 brands, go 10 years from now, we're probably going to be down to 10 or 5. It's just the way markets work. And so there's a whole bunch of speculative ideas and people are trying different things. And that's great. This is, by the way, why I think China is more capitalist than America, right? We don't have a wide variety of EVs EV makers popping up in America. We have a few, but 139. Why does China have so many EV brands and why do we have so few? And what is it about America that deters people from starting up new EV companies? We're just not seeing it in the same way. And it's not just the Chinese government handed out money. That's not it. It's that, China encourages innovation in a way that America really doesn't anymore. And you can definitely see that in the way the current administration has been treating Tesla and how they're starting to treat SpaceX and how they're treating X. They don't like innovation. They want things to stay the same. The United Auto Workers wants things to stay the same. The national security state wants things to stay the same. The thing is, the rest of the world doesn't care what you want. The rest of the world is changing. And if you actually care about climate change like you say you do, then you should be embracing this. Li Auto, by the way, they start with Li Auto. I haven't been to China. I'm in Thailand, and I haven't seen a Li Auto vehicle yet. So, they said there's a flood of them coming over. BYD is here. Chang'an Motors is here. Great Wall Motors is here. I haven't seen Li Auto yet. They're going to talk about NIO later. I haven't seen NIO yet. So it's interesting how they chose what vehicles to look at. Kind of an interesting choice. I would have focused on BYD and Chang'an Motors, and from what I've seen. Now, maybe they know more than I do, but I think they're making some interesting choices here.
This is Eunice Yoon, CNBC's Beijing bureau chief. She set out to try some of the Chinese crossovers comparable to the Model Y. With a few technical exceptions like Chinese-owned brands such as Volvo, Polestar, and Lotus, Chinese cars aren't available in the US yet.
I was surprised myself driving these cars.
First, let's address price. The BYD Tang, for example, made by Tesla's biggest Chinese rival. BYD is known for making cars very cheaply.
One of BYD's big selling points is that they're able to give you a car that is a 7-seater, a little bit of a shorter range than a Model Y, but at the same time, it's $11,000 cheaper.
So it's an interesting choice to cover the BYD Tang, and I don't know why they chose it. I'm here in Thailand. What they're pushing in Thailand is the BYD Atto 3, which is a more compact SUV than the Model 3 and much, much less expensive. It's like under $25,000 for an Atto 3. Has some deficiencies, but 5-seat, smaller, little bit less legroom in the rear, little bit less cargo room, significantly less cargo room, I should say, but still a pretty nice vehicle for under 25 grand. And it's selling like crazy. And the BYD Dolphin is like under 20 grand. Again, check out my video from before. This is crazy. And so why did they pick this vehicle? I'm not sure. Is this vehicle selling well in China? It's a 7-passenger EV. That's not really, the Model Y is really more of a 5-passenger vehicle. So why did they pick that choice?
Cost down that much. Well, and then we get into that kind of secret Chinese superpower of state capitalism, where you have entrepreneurs driving costs down, innovating, designing better product, while at the same time getting tremendous support from city, provincial, and national political leaders who want China to win.
There's this shot that keeps getting taken at China that, oh, they unfairly subsidize their companies. They get local incentives, they get state. But every time an American company opens a factory, they're getting some kind of break from the local government officials. And we're seeing in the auto industry tremendous subsidies and tremendous tax credits for EVs. And we're seeing, and big oil gets massive subsidy in the form of the U.S. military guaranteeing their flow of oil. Right? So the accusation that China's subsidizing their companies, I mean, they are, but so are we. And Europe subsidizes their companies, and Thailand has all kinds of incentives to manufacture here. This is normal. What is China doing that's different? I think that's an unfair shot at China. And then this idea of state capitalism. Look, I think he just admitted that the Chinese companies are very innovative. Well, does that happen in a state capitalism system? No. That's not what's going on here. There's something really interesting going on here. Tremendous innovation, not always correct. They're not always doing the right thing. They're making some mistakes, and some of the companies are going to fail. But they've got a very interesting approach that really encourages a lot of innovation and a lot of effort. And some of these companies are going to succeed, and maybe somebody's going to come up that's going to blindside everybody else.
Between 2009 and 2023, the Chinese government handed out an estimated $231 billion in subsidies and tax breaks.
They didn't say, well, how much money did the U.S. government hand out in subsidies and tax breaks over that period? And you're going to see this again. Like, you keep telling us how much money the Chinese government gave their industry. How much money did the American government give its industry? They don't talk about that.
BYD, which is not government-owned, received $3.7 billion in direct subsidies between 2018 and 2022.
I asked my friend Grok. You can see Grok over there talking about $15.5 billion aimed at retooling factories, $10 billion in loans, $2 billion in grants, the tax credits, historical subsidies. 2023 mentions of $27.2 billion going to the big three automakers for various EV-related initiatives. That's just 2023. And here's, I think, another shot at that. You can see this is from August 31, 2023, from the Department of Energy. Biden and Harris administration announces $15.5 billion to support a strong and just transition to electric vehicles, retooling existing plants, and rehiring existing workers. So to say that the Chinese are subsidizing their industry, well, you should, if you're going to make that criticism of the Chinese, you should address what the United States government does as well, and you should probably address what Europe does and other countries do. If what China's doing doesn't stand out as substantially different from what we're doing, then it's not a fair criticism.
But one of BYD's biggest advantages is its ability to drive down costs through vertical integration.
Vertical integration? If only there was a company in America that was very heavily vertically integrated. If only there was a company that really built its supply chains and localized its supply chains and did all these amazing things like Tesla. Tesla and Air t-shirts at elonbits.com.
BYD sold roughly 3 million cars in 2023, about half of them electric and half plug-in hybrid. This year, they're forecasting 4 million. Contrast that with Tesla, which saw sales fall year over year in the first 2 quarters of 2024.
This is missing a critical point here, which is Tesla is selling in the United States, Tesla is selling in Europe, BYD is primarily selling only in China. So, if BYD's numbers are up, and how much of their numbers are hybrids versus EVs, and the reality is that Tesla's doing fairly well in difficult markets. And is it what we all want? No, of course. We want Tesla to sell more cars. But BYD forecasting they're going to sell 4 million cars is different than BYD actually delivering 4 million cars. For now, Tesla, at least as far as we know, still makes more battery electric vehicles than BYD. And it really doesn't matter because Tesla charges about twice as much for the average. The average selling price of a Tesla is about twice as high as a BYD. So if they sell the same number of cars, Tesla generates twice as much revenue.
BYD is also one of the largest battery makers. About 40% of China's cost advantage is attributable to its engine batteries, which make up about 20 to 30% of a vehicle's total cost.
Now, this was an interesting chart here, source Barclays Research, indicating, all the cost per vehicle. And, notice Tesla's battery cost is not much higher than BYD's. Tesla actually uses BYD batteries in some of its cars. Tesla uses CATL, Chinese-made batteries in the China factory as well. Tesla manufactures its own batteries now, the 4680, and Tesla has a partnership with Panasonic, which manufactures batteries in America. And that Tesla has all kinds of other vertical integration. The other costs per vehicle, well, you really have to compare apples and apples. Like, what's a $40,000, what's a comparable car, a 5-passenger SUV with all these features, and how does it compare? And the reality is the other costs of the vehicle might be higher, assuming this is accurate, because the Tesla is selling for $20,000 more. So if Tesla's costs are $15,000 higher, but it sells the cars for $20,000 more, that's not a bad thing for Tesla. That simply means that BYD is making cheaper cars. They're still good cars. I'm not trying to crack on BYD. I think they make good cars, but let's be realistic.
BYD has done a phenomenal job of making in-house 75-80% of the parts that go into their cars. So they own the batteries and the battery supply chains. That's clear, and it contributes to lower cost and higher quality.
And then apart from batteries, pretty much across every other category, BYD's costs are lower than its Chinese competitors, Tesla, and drastically lower than legacy competitors like Ford and GM.
So I'm not sure about the comparison with other China EVs. From what I can see, other Chinese EV makers also have their costs pretty low. So I'm not sure where, maybe they're right. I just don't know. I don't know how much Barclays Research has, and some Chinese EV makers are highly unprofitable and some are cutting it close. If you have 139 manufacturers, which one are you comparing to? What about Xiaomi, for example, which is new? And then the $45,000 cost per EV for Ford and GM. The Bolt, maybe, which is a piece of crap nobody wants to buy, but the F-150 Lightning's costs are way higher than $45,000 a vehicle. The Mach-E, I don't even know if they're selling the Mach-E anymore. I never see anything about it. They're not really making a lot of EVs, and their costs, when you take in full accounting of their costs are much, much higher. The legacy auto manufacturers, Ford and GM, are in deep trouble in competing with Tesla, much less competing with these Chinese EV makers. So, what's their value proposition? Their cars aren't as good as Tesla's. They're basically not better than BYD's, might be worse than BYD's, and they cost more. So, the real story here is what deep trouble Ford and GM are in, and Stellantis and other legacy automakers.
But all Chinese automakers benefit from low costs and a localized supply chain. This can be seen in the G6 from XPeng, a relatively small company that listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 2020. It hasn't done so well, although results were solid in the last 2 quarters of 2023.
What's their pitch to the consumer? What made them different from the others?
Price. So they have a lot of other features in there as well. So we were in the XPeng G6.
I saw an XPeng G6 at this auto show that I, check out my other video. Very nice looking vehicle. I don't think the price in Thailand is $27,000. I'm not sure I saw a price. And then this range of 360 miles. That's probably a translation from the NEDC kilometer range. And this is not an EPA range. It's not a 360 mile EPA range. It's probably more like 250 or 300. There's no way that this thing's getting 360 miles of range. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. And also, I don't know what a Model Y, they didn't mention what does a Model Y sell for in China. I know what the Model Y sells for in Thailand. I think I know what this XPeng sells for in Thailand. They're competitive. The XPeng is cheaper. The Tesla offers more.
China is democratizing the smart EV.
And smart is the key word here. This means connected to the internet and loaded with tech.
Well, you know, what the definition of a smart EV is, that's something that's being shaped right now. I would say a smart EV is one that drives itself, and Tesla has the best self-driving software in the world. And I think there's a lot of other features. They're going to show off some gimmicks that these cars have, and they'll say, like, nobody else has done this. This is comical if you're a Tesla fan.
Chinese EVs tend to have a lot of bells and whistles. For example, I could ventilate my seat to deal with the summer heat.
The new Model 3 has ventilated seats.
I could change a setting so that this EV sounds as though it's running on gas.
That's not a feature, that's just stupid. I'm sorry, that's just dumb. Like, you spent engineering time making it so that you can make the car go. Maybe that's not the best use of engineering time, just my opinion.
I could tell the AI assistant to park the car without me. This is very handy.
As you're going to see later, this park itself feature doesn't always work that well. And Tesla does have that feature to some extent in some of its cars. And that's not, I think there's other car makers that have this park assist feature. I don't think it's that novel. And it's not really that, like, I've had it in my Tesla pops up, it can park itself, and I'm already parking. How hard is, like, it's not that hard to park a car. How exciting is this feature? Like, how many people need that? You know, it's, if the car can drive itself, great. If the car's not driving itself, I'm already driving. How much extra work is it for me to park the car?
Leverage these affordable tech features to target specific customers. This could be said of the Li Auto L6. Shares of its NASDAQ-listed manufacturer, $20 billion market cap, have had a rocky time while the company carves out its brand identity.
Li Auto does market itself as more of a family type of car maker.
To pull that off, the company offers extras you won't find in a Tesla.
It just flashed an 893-mile range there, and, well, that sounds amazing. It's not accurate because there's something misleading they haven't told you yet. They'll tell you, but they didn't tell you yet.
Technically, this one wasn't an EV. It has a gas-powered range extender on board. The extender appeals to road-tripping families or the many drivers stuck for hours in the city's notorious gridlock.
In other words, it's not an EV, so why is it even in your story? And if you have a gas-powered vehicle thrown in there, then you've added complexity to the car. It's harder to make the car efficient. Like, and again, 893 miles of range. That's based on some kilometers on NEDC rating, which is radically different from, but, you know, like, just put a big gas tank in it, it'll go far. Okay, big deal. That's not an EV.
Li Auto's L6 is about the same price as a Model Y, but has a longer range at 893 miles. So we are driving during rush hour in Beijing traffic, but this 5-seater is designed for families, and in a Chinese context, that means that a lot of extra creature comforts are common in the cabin. Family in the front seats can watch TV or get massaged by their chairs.
American luxury car makers have massaging seats, and okay, so you've added that screen in the passenger seat. How much does it cost to add that feature? How well does it work? How much do people actually use this feature? Okay, it looks cool. But if it's for the family, the front seat passengers watching it, do the kids in the back watch that screen? How many kids today are watching big screens versus watching things on their phone? Like, is this the... I'm not saying it's a bad feature. It's just like, well, how much does it cost to add that and how much does it get used? And is that really going to settle, you know, work out in the long run? And are they selling in volume? Or is this company... Like, I barely heard of Li Auto, and they're not in Thailand. You know, other Chinese EV makers have made it here. I haven't seen Li Auto here, so what's wrong?
And if you want a cold drink, there's a fridge in the back.
At the higher end, there are innovations that companies like Tesla have only talked about. Take NIO, for example. It was a hyped IPO on the NYSE back in 2018, but shares are down 90% from a 2021 high due to sluggish sales growth and high cash burn. NIO has had its own way of dealing with charging challenges. Battery swapping, something that Tesla had considered.
You dumbass, Tesla actually did battery swap, and it turned out that consumers didn't use it. This idea like, oh, NIO's done battery swap, Tesla considered it. No, Tesla did it. There were Model S's that had battery swap available, and they stopped because consumers weren't using it. So to pretend that Tesla's doing doesn't know about how to do battery swap, but the practical reality is that battery swap is a dumb technology. And I've got at least one or more videos criticizing NIO for doing this battery swap thing. It's the wrong angle. It's not the right approach. And you're going to see, by the way, what NIO claims and reality are not the same.
There are 3,500 battery swapping stations around the country.
So we're 92% charged, and that took a little less than 10 minutes.
Well, they say 3 minutes. My experience was about a little under 10.
It's not difficult to find charging points here in Beijing.
I don't know about China, but I know here in Thailand, there's a ton. We're about to go on a road trip tomorrow, and we're renting a Tesla. We're going to drive around, and there aren't that many superchargers in Thailand, but there are a whole bunch of chargers, particularly the PTT, which is sort of like the ExxonMobil of Thailand, that's the largest gas station network and oil company or whatever. And they have tons of EV chargers all over the place. They're limited to 120 kilowatts, mostly, where Teslas go up to 250 kilowatts, Tesla superchargers. That we will be able to charge at a Tesla supercharger when we get to one of our destinations at 250 kilowatts. But it's kind of interesting to see that they're kind of monkeying with things a little bit. And, she switched from charging to charge points, which is a different thing. There's lots of charging places in Thailand, in Bangkok, in Krung Thep, Bangkok, where I am now. The mall next door has 40 kilowatt chargers and 2 hours of free parking. So 2 hours, 40 kilowatts, you get 80 kilowatt hours in your car. You got to pay for the charging, but no big deal.
The AI assistant Nomi is a draw as well. While other car AI systems respond to direct voice commands, such as turn off the air conditioner, people on social media say that Nomi sounds more like a person. Hey Nomi, I feel so cold. 我很冷.
So, for example, instead of saying, turn off the air conditioner, I would say, oh, I'm feeling really cold right now. And then it would say, oh, okay. And then it's like, how about I just turn down the air conditioner?
Tesla does that. You tap the microphone button, you say, I'm hot, and it will make it 3 degrees colder, Fahrenheit. You say, I'm cold, it will make it 3 degrees warmer. By the way, there's a screen in the car, and it's easy to adjust the temperature, so this is just like a gimmicky feature. Tesla also, you can say, open butthole, and the charge port will open. Tesla has a bunch of voice commands. Saying it's AI, this isn't really significant AI. It's not like they've deployed, ChatGPT 3 in the car and integrated it with the car. It's just voice recognition. And it recognizes some commands, and just like Tesla, it probably recognizes some commands and doesn't recognize others. In most Teslas, you can say, open glove box, and the glove box will open. You can say, open whatever. There's a bunch of voice commands you can do with a Tesla. It's not really different. This is not really special.
And it would also make some jokes sometimes. So when it was signing off, it was like, bye.
Yeah, in a Tesla, you can make the Rainbow Road feature happen. You can jokingly say open butthole, and the charge port will open. There's other, Easter eggs in Teslas that you can play with, and other fun things you can do with a Tesla. These guys actually haven't bothered to learn about Tesla, and then they look at these other car makers and say, oh, look at these cool features they have that Tesla doesn't have. And well, you don't know what features Tesla has, so why are you even talking and comparing them to Tesla?
How many units of hardware you sell. It's all the data and analytics and aggregation and monetization of services that happen after you sell the car. That's the new business model.
That's iffy. That may be the new business model. I mean, the current legacy automakers have made their business model, don't make that much money on the car, make money on service and parts later. So the dealership makes money on service, and the car company makes money selling parts to the dealerships. And that's part of their business model, and they make money on financing. When I look at this selling other stuff to the customers in the cars, it's really hard to make that a significant business. Unless you're selling rides and robo-taxis, how much are people paying for a subscription to, a music service that they don't already have on their phone? I think it's going to be really hard to monetize that. There's this idea that you're going to be able to monetize it. And so far, I haven't seen anybody successfully monetize much of this in a way that matters a lot. Not that it doesn't matter at all, but it doesn't matter a lot.
A company like Apple, they sell us things that we didn't know we needed. And they charge us a 35% premium for it.
I think he's referring to the App Store. So, so far Tesla doesn't have an App Store. Tesla has probably the largest group of EVs and the most smart cars on the road. And so far Tesla hasn't bothered doing an App Store. There aren't a lot of apps you can, add to. Anything you can get, like I think you can get Zoom now in your car. It's all free. It's all included. So what apps are you going to include? Is there going to be an App Store at some point? You'd really need to have scale, because the smartphone manufacturers, whether it's Apple, Apple's probably made hundreds of millions of phones, and Android, there's probably, a billion plus phones out there. Well, there's a really large base of hardware out there. When you only have a couple million cars, it's a lot harder to make it, who's going to develop apps when you only have a couple million cars, and then how many people are really going to use that app? So the idea that that's really going to be the future is iffy. It's a nice idea. And if somebody got around to having 100 million cars on the road, which I think Tesla might in the future, then all of a sudden that may be sufficient to start getting app developers to make apps for it. But you'd still have to be like, well, how much do people want to play with apps in their car? I want my car to get me from point A to point B. I have a phone that has apps on it. Why do I need this in my car? I think people aren't thinking that through.
Are there any that really stood out in terms of, being like especially tech heavy?
No. And I think actually that's the point. All of these Chinese EV makers are trying to distinguish themselves somehow. So they keep putting in all these different technology features. Some of them were really, really fun, but then there were some that were not as useful. And in fact, didn't really work very well.
This is good, baby. This is good.
In 2 different cars, we tried the auto parking. And it was a little stressful.
你好，小皮，自动泊车. Please park the car.
So that didn't quite work. We're about 7 or 8 inches from the car next to us. We didn't hit it, so that's a good thing.
Quick, someone call Dan O'Dowd. Dan O'Dowd needs to get to China. He needs to save child dummies from self-parking Chinese EVs. Quick, Dan O'Dowd, get him.
When we speak to a lot of analysts, they say that Chinese drivers really like these technology features. But on the other hand, it's unclear how these tech features are going to resonate with drivers outside of China.
It's also unclear whether they really resonate with drivers inside China. Some drivers may like them, but is that a significant thing that's moving people to buy the cars? For a lot of them, apparently not.
But driving a tech-forward Chinese EV comes with its own costs.
What struck me about all of these Chinese EVs is how they didn't focus as much on performance, and it kind of showed. When I was in the Model Y, you could have pretty good control in the car, and that wasn't really the case on the whole for the cars that we were in that were from the Chinese EV makers.
So we get 11 minutes into this video, and they finally admit that Teslas are better performing cars. Like, they start off the video how the Chinese EVs are going to knock Tesla off, and how Tesla's having all these problems, and Tesla doesn't have the advantages, and they miss features that Tesla has that have had long before these Chinese EVs have had them. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, Teslas kind of drive better.
Didn't have that same level of precision when you were making a turn, for example. And in fact, that's a trend and something that is almost common knowledge among Chinese drivers. They'll talk about, oh, there's the Tesla, there's the Model Y, the Model 3, they're the performance cars.
Wait, you mean Tesla's associated with performance and quality in China? I thought it was associated with Elon Man bad. I thought Elon was doing all these things that was bad for the brand, and it was destroying Tesla sales. And it turns out that Tesla's brand, at least in China, is great performing cars of high quality. Hello?
And Chinese car makers can keep prices low might be that they sometimes don't offer more bang for buck. They make compromises.
You could really tell the difference from the ones that were pricier. They had nicer finishes, they had nicer interiors, they felt better. There weren't as many kind of jinky or odd designs that were inside the car.
And I just want to be clear here that I've been in a BYD Atto 3, I've ridden in a BYD Dolphin. They are more basic vehicles. The BYD Atto 3 is pretty nice. It's not offering like crazy fancy features. And I've sat in some of these vehicles at the shows, and I do see some of them have more luxury-oriented things. I didn't drive any of them. The MG Maxus 7, which is Great Wall Motors, the Zeekr, the Xpeng, they look nice inside, but I haven't like actually driven one to be able to tell you this is what's great about it and this what isn't. I haven't even ridden one moving. And we were supposed to drive a MG Maxus 7 at the show that we just went to. And it turned out that Great Wall Motors wasn't, even though I saw one at another location, they weren't able to get one to the show. And I'm like, it's in the same city. and they weren't able to get one to this show so people could test drive it. So it's a little janky there.
One of the cars that I was in, the steering wheel was kind of off compared to where I'd be sitting. The windshield wipers was placed in an odd place for my hand.
And even the premium vehicles show signs that these are new companies, new models, new designs, and automakers haven't worked out a lot of the kinks yet.
There's one car that I was in that had really nice leather chairs, but the way that the chairs moved, when you're driving, it's just squeaking the entire time.
I wonder if they have panel gaps.
It was so loud. Maybe these Chinese companies still don't have it down.
So are foreign automakers doomed in China? Some industry watchers have said they suspect it will be hard for non-Chinese firms to compete when homegrown brands are tapping in so well to the Chinese preference for tech. And then there's the question of which of these companies and which business model can succeed. The highly integrated firm that can just beat on cost, or the highly connected smart EV maker that makes money off of services and subscriptions.
The company that sells in the most volume is going to be the one that's going to be able to make the most out of being a highly connected EV. I don't know this idea of this highly connected EV, like what features are you offering with this car that make it such a big advantage? I'm not sure what they're talking about there.
BYD has already established that the proof of concept that they can execute on a business model and be competitive with anybody.
They're competitive on price. And I just want to distinguish here the BYD, the Atto 3, nice car, not that much range, and a slow charge rate of 88 kilowatts. Which means if you're doing a road trip in a Model Y versus a BYD and you're going, let's say 500, I'm going to make up 500 miles. The Tesla has to stop once and charge for 20 minutes. The BYD has to stop twice and charge for an hour each. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but I don't think I'm that far off there. That there's a substantial, if you're doing any kind of road trip of any kind of distance, if you're just driving around as a city car, it doesn't matter. That particular detail doesn't matter about the charge rate, and the range doesn't really matter that much. If you're driving, 50 miles a day, who cares? And that's why I think BYD's Atto 3 is selling so well, because it has actually kind of nice inside, a little small, but Thai people are smaller than me. I'm about 6 feet tall and about 220 pounds, so the size thing matters a lot more to me. My fiance is 5'6" and 110 pounds, so. And then her family, she's the tallest one in the family. Those features don't matter as much to people when the tall people are 5'6" and the average person's 5'4". Every society is going to be different there.
This other notion of a greater ecosystem built around a digital system may very well be the future, may be the TikTok of cars. But I'm not ready to say absolutely they're going to run away with everything because they have a better digital experience.
Like, they haven't really laid out, what is this better digital experience? What does this mean? It's got a couple of features. Does it have CarPlay or Android Auto? Like what Apple CarPlay or Android Auto? Like what are these special features that are so much better? The car makes jokes? Like that's the only one I could think of that they came up with that was anywhere different, is that the car makes jokes. Kind of, sort of. Or laughs at something, or it makes an engine sound, which Porsche, I think some other car companies have added that feature, which is a bogus feature that no one should care about. Is that really going to get you to buy a car that it goes room, room? Really?
Can they duplicate in different languages and different cultures a comparably high level of enjoyment as they do at home for their own consumers?
They really have, they're overselling this. They really haven't demonstrated that the great experience that they're describing for Chinese consumers has been delivered for Chinese consumers first. And Tesla is selling basically the same car across multiple cultures. So make a good car and it'll sell. BYD is selling in Thailand. I guarantee you the BYD Atto 3 would sell in the United States. If they were selling that for less than $25,000 in the United States, I guarantee that thing would sell. It would sell like hotcakes.
And their own financial situation is by no means secure.
Most of these companies aren't profitable. That's another characteristic of tech. Most of the tech companies, until they reach a critical mass or a certain inflection point from a sales cycle standpoint, they're not going to be profitable.
Tesla is profitable. Tesla's been profitable for a while. BYD is on the edge of profitability. I think they're making profits. They're cash flow negative the last couple quarters. And what I see with BYD is grabbing market share. They are selling at a low price point to get more customers to buy their car. They're establishing a footprint. They've established a whole bunch of sales locations here in Thailand. I suspect that they're doing the same wherever they go. Whatever their strategy is probably global. Tesla does not seem to be opening a whole lot of sales centers. It's a different approach. And so BYD's approach, and I think BYD, I think in the long run, Tesla's going to win this point. If you believe that the future is selling cars to customers, then grabbing market share makes a lot of sense. And as the field gets winnowed out, you make money later after the other competitors are gone. You're able to make a little bit more margin. But if the future is self-driving cars and you're not really selling cars to consumers anymore, you're selling rides to customers, then the grabbing market share isn't going to matter because the consumers aren't going to be buying cars anymore. So that's an interesting question. I haven't seen anybody else really talking about that dichotomy. Why isn't Tesla opening? Because Tesla has basically one major sales center in Thailand and a couple of other little small locations where you can look at the cars and talk to somebody. Where BYD, like I said, has I think 40 sales locations in Thailand. And who knows how many they have in other places. So what's the strategy? I haven't seen anybody in this, these experts in automotive talking about this important point.
So, will Chinese EV makers dominate the global industry?
For Chinese EVs, the big challenge is going to be to convince people overseas who have brand loyalty to the GMs and the Toyotas and the VWs, and to be able to convince them to switch not only to EVs, but to Chinese EVs that they've never heard of.
So the way they talk about it, it's as if they're competing just for the U.S. market. Like BYD's only future, the Chinese EV's only future is the U.S. market. And they talk about brand loyalty as if General Motors and Ford have any brand loyalty. Their brand loyalty is in the tank. Lexus is the only company other than Tesla that has really substantial brand loyalty. If you can make a car that's going to cost people less than $25,000, is going to do what they want to do, and they can get that instead of a $40,000 gas car that costs them $15,000 more up front and then costs them more to operate, and they can't charge at home because you can't charge a gas car at home. They have a lot of advantages. The reason that BYD is not able to sell cars in the United States is because the United States has a 100% tariff on EVs. And I think Europe is imposing tariffs and Canada's imposing tariffs. And these are bad economic policy, by the way. They're bad economic policy. And if you believe in the transition to electric vehicles, you should be encouraging it. So my view is that the Chinese EV makers will eventually wash out the weak ones and the strong ones will survive. And BYD will probably be one of the strong ones. And they will be able to manufacture at lower cost and higher volume. And they will probably capture the low end of the market. And this is assuming that the future is a world of people buying cars, of consumers buying cars. If we are headed to the robo-taxi world that some of us think about, which these guys seem to be completely unaware of that possibility, then everything's different. And my guess would be that the Chinese EV makers will be quicker to license Tesla's FSD. I think Tesla's FSD will dominate that future market. Chinese EV makers will more quickly adopt Tesla FSD, and they will be able to adopt it more quickly because like they said, BYD is vertically integrated, so it's going to be easier for BYD to catch up, and BYD is already a partner with Tesla. So my prediction is the first major car maker other than Tesla to use FSD will be BYD, and BYD will partner with Tesla to spread robo-taxis around the world. I think that's inevitable. But yeah, I shouldn't say inevitable. There's a chance that something goes wrong, something happens somewhere, but it's looking really good.